actually December 31st, 1974. I did not ride my bike here. I just happened to be in Aspen, broke, because a friend was coming out, and I had a girlfriend from high school that went to the high school up in Carbondale, and her cousin was married to this woman, Tammy Pabst, from TBR family. And anyway, I had this opportunity to go and spend Christmas with the Pabsts and the Schlitzes there. But and then one of them knew about a potential job up here in Steamboat Springs, and I kind of was lost because it had been 2 years. I'm still on my year out between high school and college. But anyway, it was with Manfred Woog. It was a 1-hour photo processing business that just opened up behind the Chief Theater screen. There's this secret room back there. Michael Berry owned the theater back then, and Manfred was kind enough to get me started. So I hitched up here from Aspen. Missed my turnoff at Walcott, so I had to go to up over Berthoud Pass, and I got dropped off because it was dark. I couldn't stand the cold. It was 40 below zero. So I had all the equipment. I had a sleeping bag, the insulate pad, a down parka, down pants, and just slept on the side of the road in the moonlight. Beautiful night, but I didn't really see it because my sleeping bag was pulled pretty tight because my nose would have froze off otherwise. And in the morning, when I went to roll up my insulate pad, it just snapped in 3 pieces. But it was a beautiful sunny day, and I got back on the highway just this side of Fraser, and got picked up. First ride went all the way to Steamboat. Of course, when I got to Steamboat, Manfred was actually back in Wisconsin at the time, so I didn't know anyone else here, so I used my couple of nights here, used my last couple dollars for some peanuts over at Boyce Market, and a couple of quarters in the clothes dryer for my sleeping bag to warm it up before the next 40 below night. So anyway, I'm going to go back a little bit, talk about my family and my growing up. Grew up in West Bend, Wisconsin, just north of Milwaukee. My father inspired a lot of adventure because, well, first of all, his name was Leif Eriksen. And he went by the name Huck because his grandfather and his great-grandfather were also Leif Eriksens. So he would have been either Junior or Huck. And he just loved Mark Twain stories. And he was he joined the Army at 17 to join the forces, the campaign against Adolf Hitler. He never went overseas in combat, but he was able to go to college on the GI Bill in Madison, Wisconsin, in journalism. And he said journalism, number one, is all about telling the truth and ethics. So that kind of stuck with me. My brother he was an ethicist. He went to college in that field. And then I had a little sister too. Anyway, my dad, his first job after graduating out of Madison, UW-Madison, Wisconsin-Madison, was in West Bend, Wisconsin, where he met my mom, who was a home ec teacher, and pretty much had the same job for 40 years. He was the sports editor for the West Bend News, and he did all the school news. So I might have to go to my notes here in a minute. My mom was I might have mentioned home ec teacher, and they were pretty frugal. She taught me a lot about being careful with my finances, but maybe I wasn't so much, except I did take off out of high school on my bike. It was kind of the very end of the Vietnam War, and my draft number was not picked yet, but I don't think they picked them that year. I think it was the last year, 1973. And but anyway, I was kind of chicken and ready to go to Canada. I was against the war. I was pretty political at the time. Mostly environmentalist though. Worried about just the future. And I'm going to run some numbers by you later that I worked up on using AI yesterday on the internet for how many BTUs are in a gallon of gas versus how many BTUs that your body burns to pedal X number of miles. And I'm going to go right to it. Even though it's out of order here. I always threw out those numbers because I had heard it's equivalent to 1,100 miles on your bike. But a gallon of gas has 120,000 BTUs in it. Heavy exercising, your body will burn 1,000, but even just sitting on a couch, it burns 300, so that leaves 700 to pedal your bike. Anyway, it turns out that if you do the math, going 16 miles an hour, that's equivalent to riding your bike 2,742 miles. So it is pretty, I always use 1,200 miles, and it's way more than that actually, it turns out. So that was an eye-opener, and those are the kind of numbers, that in high school I was fixated on. And one reason I thought, going into the field of bicycling was a good thing for the planet. It was either that, I also loved exercise and, biochem or something like that, being a nutritionist or some kind of environmental science. But again, here I am. But it had a pretty cool career. So anyway, that first bike ride out of high school it lasted about 6 months on my bike. Ended with hopping freight trains coming back from Santa Fe, New Mexico area all the way back to Galesville, Illinois, where the yard bull picked me up and called my parents, but I was 18, I looked like 17. So they didn't come get me, so I hitched the rest of the way home. But during the bike ride, I was pretty frugal. I was by myself, so it left the whole palette open to adventure. Anything that came up, like a job in a bike shop, which I had worked in bike shops in high school. Already knew how to take a free wheel apart and lose all the bearings in the lawn, working on that. My mom wouldn't let me come anywhere near the house, taking those greasy bikes apart. But trying to remember where I was going with that.
So where did you go for the 6 months?
My goal was maybe Canada, but without the draft number thing. No, I don't know. I did go to the Western U.S., started in the Boundary Waters, met my friend Tom Keenan, he's sitting back here. And another friend, Dave Lee, in the Boundary Waters. We canoed for about a week and then hopped on my bike, and western Minnesota, it got really windy. I almost turned around. All I could think of was mama. It was brutal. It was like 40 mile an hour headwinds, And then I heard South Dakota was really windy and it would be worse, but got better. Was picked up in pure South Dakota by this kid that his dad had a bike shop in the basement, and he invited me in for dinner. So it was a lot of that kind of thing where people would just glob onto you because you were such a freakish thing back then. Nobody was doing, until the bicentennial, and I already had the shop here in Steamboat, in 1976, but there was a big organization out of Missoula, Montana that put together this ride across the country thing in 1976 to celebrate our 200th anniversary. Yeah, a little different than cage fighting, but but anyway, from there I went to through the Badlands, would pull into East Side Rest area. Had a pretty tight budget, maybe $150 saved. So I knew I would have to pick up a little work along the way. So I worked in apple orchards in Okanagan Valley. I worked in the Old Faithful Inn for a while, flipping burgers. But before that, a lot of bike shop jobs, because it was during the gas crunch, the first gas crunch, gas lines everywhere, and people were really interested in buying bikes all of a sudden. So all these bike shops really were hurting for help, and I knew how to build wheels and assemble bike parts. Throwing them on the out of the box and getting the pedals on and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I pulled into Rapid City. It was 111 degrees. Oh my God!
Oh my God!
It was a new record, all-time record for heat. So I worked at the two-wheeler dealer bike shop and camped in the park, which they had a flood the year before, and I was camped by one tree, and somebody came by in the park and said, "Oh, you're not camped by that." They pulled a body off that tree last year from the flood. I guess it killed a lot of people, kind of like the Big Thompson deal. But anyway, from there went up into the Black Hills, and I was looking for a good deal on a meal. So sure enough, there was all these cars parked along the way, and found out George McGovern, who I had campaigned for in high school. Again, I think he was running against Tricky Dick, but didn't get voted in. But anyway, he was speaking at a union picnic, and there was all this free food, and I just ordered myself. And then I had to go uphill with all this huge belly, and rode into the dark. It was pretty hot, so it felt pretty good. And rolled my sleeping bag down a ditch off the side of the road, and woke up in the morning, had no idea where I was. And there's Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, right above me. I was like in the most probably illegal spot you could ever be in camping. But I didn't have a tent out, I just had my sleeping bag roll out, and just a little net over, keep the mosquitoes off, that's about it. But anyway, I hadn't run across any other bike riders until the Bighorns. And there was this guy from West Virginia who had this Camp Trails orange backpack that was strapped to a Schwinn Varsity on a Pletcher rack, which is really shaky, and it would just shake coming down the hills. I don't know how he kept that thing on the road, but he was really strong. And we rode together all the way to Yellowstone. And there I ended up working at Old Faithful for a while, and after Yellowstone, got picked up by, I wasn't hitchhiking, but this guy, middle of nowhere, Lemhi, Leodore, south of Salmon, Idaho, there's this long stretch of nobody. Those two towns, one was population 3 or 4, and the other one was population 2. And then there was this ranch about 20 miles back from those that this guy insisted that I come and get a free meal. Little did I know they were going to make me stack hay for the next week. But it ended up not being a week because it rained a bunch. And then we went on a cattle drive, and they kept looking at me like, "Isn't your saddle sore yet?" So that's where that, and I of course said no. I was, this is nothing compared to riding a bike across country. So. But I was on horseback this cattle drive, and all we did was move salt blocks to new spots and move the cows to the new spots. So, beautiful country. So that was a great experience. Had a little everything. Had the hippie living in the trailer, had the 19-year-old really, responsible young man that ran his dad's ranch, and then you had the younger brother who was a total redneck, but all of them loved to go to the bar. The hippie, the redneck, maybe not the responsible guy, but you know, I failed Friday night if I didn't get thrown in jail. Yeah, they basically, you know, busted up the bars and got in fights and stuff. It was great. But anyway, from there, yeah, went on and on, you know, up into the Canadian Rockies, through Missoula, up to Jasper, back over to Yoho Park and Banff, Jasper, Okanagan Valley. I had cousins living in Seattle area. Had my dad's uncle or cousin, first cousin, Kent Eriksen. He was a colonel in the Air Force or something like that, and they took me in. They had 4 boys, and they were really cool. One of them lost a leg as a young man and from cancer, but they're all doing great. So let's see, from there ended up going like up to Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, before it blew up, which just happened to happen on my 25th birthday. If you ever need to remember my birthday. It was my 25th, 1980, May 18th. So I was born on 55, May 18th. But anyway, eventually, I did have a pretty bad wreck in San Francisco. My wheel dropped between some storm grates, and I think I got a concussion, so I don't really remember the rest of the trip. But I probably should go on about other things. Let's see where we're at here. I should back up. So I have a long one, and I have the shorter one. There's probably some other examples of I don't know, other things I did in high school. I skipped over that, which I could do. I mean, my biggest accomplishment maybe in high school was being the editor of the school newspaper. Even though I couldn't spell or type, I could compose a sentence and pretty much tear down some of the, I was good at editing. That's about it. But it was kind of a lampoon or I don't know, it was what was the word, Kate?
Satire.
Yeah, it was definitely a satire, thank you. But it was fun. I mean, kids just waited for that paper to come out every week or every 2 weeks, whenever. I can't remember. At first I was the cartoonist as a junior and loved it. And like Ralph Steadman was maybe my hero back then, you know, kind of wild cartoons, but generally featuring the school administrators or principals. But and then from there, became the editor and as a senior. So, but it was pretty much every issue would come out and I'd just go, oh yeah, there it is. Kent Eriksen, please report to the principal. Oh, one thing I got to tell you how I survived. On $156, I kept a ledger of how much money I spent on my bike trip. 6 months. 156 bucks. But I had free meals all over the place, it seemed like. You know, so you pull into a wayside rest area, and there's some grandmothers over there pulling into the parking lot. Oh, they got a big picnic basket, kind of like Yogi, Boo Boo. I don't know which one I was, probably Boo Boo. I was the little guy all through high school and stuff. I wrestled 98 pounds as a freshman in high school. So, anyways, I parked my bike kind of next to a tree, and there's nobody else. You know, they had never seen. They ask you every time, where'd you come from? How far have you been? You tell them, and they go, oh my God, Here, have. This was after I had dug through the panniers for a while and pulled out a jar of peanut butter that I saved. And there's a little left in there, and I dig at it for a while, scrape it, and then rip off a half piece of bread, and then just inhaled it, and then they went, "Oh, you must be hungry." But, and same in the evening, you go to either state county campground, state campground, city parks, not so much. You usually didn't get fed as much. But I was at those national park campgrounds were usually the best. And somehow I'd sneak in with the bike and not have to pay anything. But yeah, so anyway, I told you about
What kind of bike did you ride then?
I had a 15 speed, which was pretty rare back then. So it had low gears, and it was a Raleigh Grand Sport Chrome. Beautiful bike, I really liked it. And I had, I got to tell you about my panniers. My mom, being a home ec teacher, let me use her cherished Singer's sewing machine to make some panniers. And a sleeping bag. I'm one of the Frostline kids back then.
Yes.
You might remember some of that. But you've never seen this backpack before. The panniers actually would convert with straps into a backpack. So I stashed my bike in the national parks and would do 3, 4 day, 5 day hikes sometimes. And one of them I got caught in a snowstorm in Yosemite. It was kind of later in the year, and sure enough, it snowed 2 feet that night. I was way back. I was going to go over Carson Pass, I think it was called, or something like that. And I ended up, the next day it was beautiful. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, pushing this tent off of my face. It was just collapsing. And the next day it was bright and sunny, which I thought was great. But back then, this was before cell phones, credit cards, sunglasses. I didn't have sunglasses, believe it or not. Bike shorts, gym trunks we used. That was, don't tell the story, Tom. Anyway, one time I had to use a Cracker Jack. No, I wanted to tell you. There was a box on the side of the road, Cracker Jacks. Well, was it a free treat?
Well, that gives new meaning to the motto, surprise in every box.
Because, things would just kind of wear funny, and you had to do whatever it took to protect them.
Cushion.
Once in a while. Without bike shorts or shiny butter, you didn't have any of that stuff, so.
So they were called Cracker Jacks.
Cracker Jacks, yeah.
To cover both.
Yeah. Anyway.
She's a nurse. I could have said Cracker Nuts.
So I get to, so I'm going to skip over some of this other stuff. Where was I on that?
Arriving to Steamboat.
Yeah, we got to hear about Steamboat here. So I went, first thing was affordable housing over at Riverbend, because Larry out there that had the restaurant, he had these cabins in the back, and they weren't occupied in the winter because there were no heating sources in this one. So I signed up for $50 and realized that was a little high for me. So I found this roommate via a little ad I put on the Boys Market,
Bulletin
board. Thank you. So anyway, George Torella, who's a stained glass artist, had a younger brother, Rick Torella, who had just moved to town and was looking for a place. And I had already somehow ran across some of the CMC students that were students of George Tolles up there, and heard all the stories about George, and just always wanted to meet him. Another guy, Pete Gorell, was another guy I met early on, and also Gil Barbier. Just all kinds of interesting people. Tom Watry, he was a iron worker out at the 2 power plants. That he's the reason I got the got interested in the incinerator, which originally was located out 20 Mile Road, where the bus barn is now, across from the lumber company out there, the builder's first choice. Yeah, he blindfolded me one day and said, we're going on a field trip. And I had to somehow ride my bike blindfolded out there with him, and opened up my eyes when he pushed me into the middle of it. And he said, wouldn't this make a great bike shop? And I got to thinking about it, and I went, wow, I used to pollute the whole town of Steamboat back in the 60s, you know? It'd be pretty ironic, so right up my alley. And it was really a cool, you know, but there's no floors, no tower in the middle, you know, it's just for burning bark, you know, and all the waste from the wood mill from the log operation out there back in the 60s. Anyway, back to the riverbank cabin. So me and Rick, you know, kind of froze the first night there, and so we decided, let's go find a wood stove, and somebody suggested we get a 55-gallon drum, and somebody gave us a tool to, I think a handsaw to cut a door into it, but it still had all this paint on it, you know, so when we fired it up, it took all day to kind of fabricate it. Fired it up, and it was like, oh God, it's middle of winter, we gotta sleep outside again. For like 2 days, you know, it just took forever to burn all that paint out and make it habitable. But stayed there for a little bit, and a couple of months, and then found some affordable housing, and that was the tree house. And one of the CMC students, Jeff Law, who was a good friend of Chan Spear in town, and George, they all went to college up there together up at CMC, and he had built a platform and kind of a rudimentary tree house. It was up against National Forest, but it was on Frank Bradley Sr.'s property. And Frank, I contacted Frank and asked him, hey, how about, you know, if I homestead here, you know? And the next summer he came up and, you know, sat around the campfire with us and told the stories, kind of like I am as an old man today telling my story. So I lived there 5 years, and I got my water out of the creek. What do they call that new dysentery? Explosive diarrhea. Only had that twice. During that period, it was a great creek source, a good water source, but I had to hike down the hill quite a ways to get to the water and fill up like a 5-gallon jug and hike it back up the hill. I did not have a car for the whole time I lived at the treehouse, so my means of transportation was either going down to the road and hitchhiking, which was, I just remember one time when Kevin Bennett picked me up and he had a bathtub in the back, and I crawled down to the road because my back had gone out so bad that I thought I was going to die. I had to go to the chiropractor, and he said, oh, perfect, Kent. I picked you up so you could help me move this tub. But almost always I rode my bike, and in the winter I skied. And I worked in Rob Hawkins' ski shop, Nighthawk Ski Service, when it was at the Harbor Hotel, the old harbor, and in the winter. And then that was after I had, and then I also worked at Inside Edge, but I want to thank Downtown Brown, Patrick Browning, Chip Ravenscroft, and John Jeffries were partners. Was it Bug Carey that owned the Inside Edge just before them? Anyway, but I came to them and said, what are you doing with your ski rental area in the summer? And they worked me out a deal, a percentage of my gross. So that started Source Saddle. So that was, I was still 19 years old when I opened the doors for Source Saddle Sudbury, and really didn't have any bike lines except for maybe Stella, you know, there's a distributor in Fort Collins for some bikes, and then eventually the next year was Motopecan and Univega. I think Univega came a year or two later. They were one of the first mountain bikes besides Specialized, I think the second or same time. Besides the ones me and my friend Steve Keswick, who kind of lived in a teepee after he did get expelled from Whiteman, but he's really a bright. He lived in a teepee not too far above Whiteman, and but man, he was a jack of all trades. He knew the welding, he knew he could figure out anything super creative, and without him, I probably would have never got Moots off the ground or the incinerator refabricated or torn down. There's pictures of them hanging off of ropes with cutting torches, because all the bolts that held that thing together were so rusted you couldn't undo them, except with a cutting torch. But yeah, that was quite the, we'll go into that a little bit, moving that thing. We got a collage. How do you say it?
You said it.
Montage, collage in there of all that. I had to accentuate that today a little bit because it was kind of a neat piece of history, although it was, bound to go someday just because of the location and everything, and I couldn't afford to keep it, or keep up with the maintenance and all that. But moving that thing, yeah, we popped the top off of the crane, Ben's crane service. But then we had to cut like 12 feet up from the bottom because Clay Canfield was the engineer, Joe Robbins was the architect to help me decide what part of it to use. And the bottom had been kind of compromised by all the heat. I don't think we had a metallurgist out there, but we got some ideas from Clay. He said, and then he designed a missile silo pad for it that recently when they tore it down, the guy said, oh my God, that was by far the toughest building I have ever torn down. And I've torn down a lot of them with these huge track hose. Wow. Just that cone part, just the shape of it. I won't go into my dream one time of a nuclear blast on the backside of Housen Hill where, I will go into it. All the buildings, Double Z, all the buildings in town just went gone, and the bike shop. I mean, this was a really realistic dream, believe it or not. The bike shop, it blew in the windows, and the pop just popped open because it was on hinges. We put hydraulics on it to let the heat out in the summer. And so it popped open, and then up in the air in a big spiral was all the bike mechanics and bikes shooting up in the air. I woke up in a cold sweat on that one. Thank God. But anyway, yeah, it's gone. A lot of people say good riddance, but you gotta be open to the next guy that has the new dream, young energy. So, but it would have been nice to, but I did pop the top. Steve, when he welded those hinges on, he was kind of complaining because I said, well, make it so the top plates can be unbolted someday. He says, why the heck would you ever need to do that? And here we are 45 years later. It came in real handy not having to be up there with a cutting torch and just unbolting some bolts. And then we had the crane come by last couple months ago and popped the top and drove it up the road at 3 in the morning with a bunch of lights and follow vehicles and all that. And it's going to be part of the cable glider. Many years ago, I got involved with making the evacuation systems for the ski area in town. Roger Perricone came to me from the ski patrol and said, we got a new Gandhi, we need some new bikes to evacuate people. We have to show the tram board that we have a process. If it was to shut down, from being derailed or whatever, and get people out before they freeze to death. And the old system was really labor intensive. It took 3 people, and it still was way slow. Yep. And so I made these bikes that had a dead man brake on. You just push out on a lever, and the ski patrolmen, they practice with them. They ride down the cable, and they're light enough that they can hike them up to the towers. You've seen the ladders on the sides of the towers, way up high. They hike them up there with their ropes. They ride down to the first Gandhi car, stop, and then belay people to the ground, and then rehook on the other side of the clasp that holds the Gandhi car on, and then they continue. And that was a pretty nice side business for me. I would make those on the side between making Moots bikes. So, but I did love riding a bike, but I didn't get to do it quite as much because it was busy. I always seemed like it was always tough to make ends meet, with bikes and all that. But there's some backstories on that one. But we did our best, and it's worked out really well for me in the end here, especially after I left. I did leave. I was way into Moots, and money was not a thing. I didn't even think about that during that period until maybe I turned 50 almost. And then I went, how am I going to survive in Steamboat? Retired. So Katie and I decided it was time to do my own thing completely, because I always had partners at Moots. And Eriksen worked out really well. We had a lot of business. It was perfect timing. We had this new computer program that I could actually run that would do diagrams of everyone's bikes, and the dialogue worked really well, and we had a real success story there. I should talk about some of the Moots successes. Somewhere in here. I think it's on the back here. I don't know if you realize that Moots was really one of the first 3 mountain bike builders. And our first bike, I actually sent my buddy Steve, who helped me with the cone, building that, to the Bruce Gordon Frame Building School. I was signed up for it, and we had just too much to do at the shop still, getting the building to get down and getting all the orders together. And we had taken on a new partner, Bruce Alston, to help with the finances and work some of the retail. So yeah, it just didn't work out for me to go to that class, but he brought back all the knowledge. And in 1980, I think it was early 81 that we put out our first mountain bike. The first frame out of the shop was a mountain bike, and then 2 years later in 1983, there was actually a national NORBA, National Off-Road Bike Association championship that 100 people, all the best riders in the world, but it was really just in the country because Europe hadn't found out anything about mountain bikes yet. So Steve, a guy named Steve Tilford. That's a story that it wasn't really a Moots, but it was because it was a guy named Michael Facca that ran the Levi's Raleigh team back then, and it was a road team. And Steve Tilford was the national cyclocross champion at like 20 years old. And we got Steve, we got Roy Nickman, all these really incredible athletes, including Andy Hampson, who's the only American ever to win the Giro and has won Alpe d'Huez, and finished 4th at the Tour de France, I think twice, and 7th once. Anyway, they all got on board, and Alexi Graywall, who was the 84, something like that, 84 Olympic gold medalist, had informed the Levi's Raleigh team that I made a really cool mountain bike, really good mountain bike. And back then there weren't even any. I think Ross had just started making mountain bikes, maybe Specialized. Yeah, Specialized team was maybe there. But anyway, Steve ended up winning that race, and that really put us on the map, even though I did paint the bikes with Raleigh decals. Black and red with Raleigh decals, but word got out, so. And then the next year, 84, we raced again, and I was planning to do the first one, but I was pretty fit back then, and probably was my best performance I ever had, on a bike, riding against the best. Ed Oren was just in front of me, and I finished off the podium in 4th out of 100 guys, so I was pretty, that's still my proudest moment. As far as physical effort. Let's see. Yeah, in 1996 I was inducted at the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame. There's a guy named, who was the curator of when it was in Crestview, there was a curator named Don Cook who raced with me in that 84 Norba National race, and he would have finished top 5, but he crashed right in front of me. He said I ran him over, but broke his collarbone. He probably would have beat me. But anyway, he was built really odd. He was like an ostrich. I didn't tell my ostrich story yet, did I?
Not yet.
It's your chance.
You don't have time.
Okay. No time. That's for the book, if we ever have one. Anyway, that's a good story. That's a 2nd grade story, a 3rd grade. Anyway, so
Yeah, now we know. Okay,
I'll make it quick. Mr. Soxy, I was looking forward to the art teacher coming in. He was my favorite thing, and I was the littlest kid in the class. So I had to do something to get some attention, you know. So I said, today we're making paper mache eggs, and we blew up balloons and wrapped paper mache around them. And I said, Mr. Soxy, I want to make one this big. And sure enough, you know, the paper mache eggs, he said, you're on. And he said, those paper mache eggs, he didn't tell us that they were going to be bird bodies. So I ended up working for 2 weeks on this bird that ended up being a 6-foot-tall ostrich. Everybody else had these like little sparrows and maybe hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are cool, but anyway, back to the Don Cook story. He was built like an ostrich. He had all legs, really short body, and was an incredible bike rider, but would go over the bars on occasion because you had to have his seat so high. So he just globbed onto the idea of the 29er. In '99, he got the very first batch of tires. There was like 10 that came prototypes in the country, and found out about it. So he drives it straight from San Francisco to my shop, nonstop, and said, we're building the first 29er that's ever been built. There's a guy named Wes Williams that did Willits, that if you look at AI, he's credited. Somebody else, Vicious or somebody, was credited, but according to Don, no, I made the first frame that would actually fit this new mountain bike size tire, because before that it was just like cyclocross size tires, like 40C. So he claims I made the first 29er, but he really was the inspiration. Same thing kind of happened with the 650. The very first Moots bike we built in the shop actually had these adjustable brake mounts, because back then the only 26-inch wheels weighed a ton. They were steel, and I wanted to use the 650B, which is the 27.5 rim size, and there were some Finnish and Euro French tires out there. Wobbler made some that were like 1.5-inch tires. So if you're a mountain biker, you might be interested in this. But anyway, so yeah, in a way, we made the first 650 bike because the brake mounts would adjust anywhere from 26 to a 700C size. Of course, 700Cs back then were just like 23C tires or 25, 1.125-inch tires, pretty small. So it wasn't capable of a 29. They weren't, those tires came out way later. Like 99 was the first 29er tire. WTB made, Steve Potts and crew at WTB brought those in, and Don brought that tire in the shop, and sure enough we pulled off making special chainstay with extra clearance and fitting everything in, and there we have it. So, but yeah, 27.5 came about more like 2006, a guy named, and that luckily is noted, if you look really hard on AI, that he contracted me to make the first 27.5 bike. So that was kind of cool. Other things we made, well, we started with steel and then evolved to titanium bikes. And in like 1990, 91, we had a welder, Ted Leal, who had welded titanium for the Air Force, I think it was, and all aerospace stuff like that. So he had some credentials, and we had some of the very first titanium bikes. Lightspeed, not Lightspeed, but there was one or two before us, maybe Lightspeed, but and titanium. But we did a lot of the first things. We did this YBB, which was just a little rear suspension that Richie ended up contracting from us at one point. He did it in steel, and didn't pay attention to the preload and all that, so they didn't all. We had special tubes drawn for that, and we had great success with the YBB, especially when we turned into titanium, because titanium can flex a lot further and come back without getting, fatigued. Aluminum's the worst for that. Steel, not so bad, but titanium's by far the flexiest, but still can be stiff if you use the right size tubes. So yeah, we made the first 29er, the first 27 fiber. In fact, I was the only one at the 2008 BC bike race. There were 1,000 bikes in that race, or at least 500. There were 29ers, but no 27.5s. I had a 27.5 with the antenna rear end and a DT fork, and it was the only bike with 27.5 tires in 2008 at that race. So that was kind of ran with that. That was after Moots, and Eriksen Cycles kind of ran with that for a while. But we did a lot of road bikes and tandems and all kinds of other bikes. But I think we can probably do a quick open up to some questions.
I'm not a big bike rider, and you've mentioned a lot of numbers. I'm just curious, you obviously have a very creative, imaginary, and artistic mind. How did you collect your group that helped you with all of the engineering, logistics of everything? The opening of a shop, running it? I mean,
How did I drum it?
how did
You
it?
just go down to get a six-pack.
And a napkin.
Isn't that right, Brian?
You know, a bunch of those people that source saddle, Moots.
I don't know. I
We're
mean,
still
we had
friends after 20,
we had a lot of.
40 years, whatever. Like that's a still.
I'm just so blessed that I ended up in this community with
Yeah.
so many transients. But no, it's an amazing place. It really is. And it was so neat to see Mary at the very end of the bike shop open the yoga studio, because when Joe Robbins presented the cone to the city council, I think it was Joe Brennan, city council member, he said, we really don't have a architectural code in this town, so I can't really say no to it, and it's well presented. And he said, I just pray that you don't paint it passionate pink. Just because of the shape, I guess. And sure enough, that's what Mary did. Go ahead.
Kent, how are you?
Good.
Hey, I wanted to know who started anodizing your bikes with the hippy dippy anodizing, the early bikes.
That came about, of course, by just looking at jewelry, probably going to Art and Park or something. And it was a collaborative effort. REA Copa really got into getting electrocuted. So yeah, let's pray for him. He just rolled his skid steer like 20 times, building a trail in, or 40 times, somewhere in there. He doesn't even say, but he's pretty beat up. But he's okay, I think. Concussion though. But anyway, he was really involved, and then Moots' they're doing a beautiful job with it. It wasn't easy to do, so, but I don't know. Go ahead, Scott.
I've got a couple things to ask you to confirm what is in my mind. I don't know what the truth is. The trip down in Moab, the one-day trip around the White Rim,
Yep.
and you were on a tandem. Were you on a tandem, did that?
Actually, Porcupine Rim, I was on a tandem.
And
Yeah.
then you were on a tandem on Slick Rock too, is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Did you dip?
You know what? When I was on a tandem on Porcupine Rim, I was riding with this guy who started Vantana, Sherwood Gibson, and he had all this experience with motocross. I mean, he was a heck of a rider, and I was the stoker. So, and it was during dirt camp, and it was like a camp that people paid for, and we were always asked to do it. I'm thinking of who's the skier from Sun Valley or from Ketchum that grew up across the lake from you? Anyway.
Muffy Ritz.
Muffy Ritz was part of dirt camp, and Mark Howe and Henry, his last name was Henry, Franklin Henry. Anyway, he thought it would be really fun to ride down to the single track at full tilt and see if Mark Howe and Franklin Henry could keep up, and there was no way. I mean, he was just airing everything. He's destroyed his down tube on his beautiful Vantana tandem, just landing on rocks and stuff. But all I could think of, and I gotta say, is at least I got this water balloon in front of me.
The other thing is the magazine that was down in Crescent Butte maybe, and you were going to be
Hank Barlow?
reviewed, and so you, instead of driving down there, rode your bike down there
Yeah.
to be reviewed.
Yeah, I went over, is that Cottonwood Pass through El Jebel, and yeah, that's back in the early days, way early, when they were steel bikes and all.
You didn't tell them that you were going to do it? What'd they say when you walked in to show your bike?
Okay.
And it was all dirty and...
It was cool, Good way to stay in
Like
shape.
bike should be.
Yeah, had the fenders on, so I wasn't that dirty. I think I had fenders on. Almost died that trip, actually, going into Aspen. I had to go up over Pearl Pass to get there too. So I went into Aspen and then up to the back town up there above Aspen. I'm to the west of Aspen. Can't go.
Did that affect their review?
I think it was a good review. Yeah, we got written up quite a bit. We were characters, but we really didn't follow the AI very close and we didn't get many facts straight. So luckily, some of this is being filmed, so that I'm straightening up some of the history. But who cares? You got to go on to the next thing.
Kent and Katie raced the Leadville 100 multiple times on a tandem.
Yeah, we had the record for many years, quite a few years for tandem.
And we built a tandem for Scott Berryman and Nelson Vale.
Oh, yeah.
That was a single-speed track bike. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I pulled into Andy Hampson's house in Boulder on 6th Street. He lives a real steep hill, and I said, "You got to check this bike out." He wouldn't get on, and I got on, and all of a sudden I realized, I forgot I don't have brakes, and I couldn't hold back the weight of the thing. I had to lay it down. All of a sudden I was going way too fast, because it was a track bike, so it didn't have brakes. And it had a fixed gear, so you couldn't coast. You didn't think about putting your foot down because it would have just got thrashed. Your leg would have got thrashed. So. Only option was to lay it down on the pavement there.
A little road rash.
It heals. Not anymore though. Yeah, not enough. I went biking the other day with Kelly Boniface and Pete, and on the sound shop, and they took me down one of the tabletop jump mount hills, and I went, ugh. It's like it's like motocross, I just don't want to get air on a mountain bike. I don't mind on skis, but on a mountain bike, no thank you. But she's borrowed a bike because it was within the shop from Brock, and it had all this travel, but boy, she could really ride that thing, Because you have to get all this air, and then the tabletop, you don't want to land on top, you got to get down to the backside, one after another. But I like the old school cross-country trails much better. They suit me. We miss those.
So just briefly, Kent, he talks about the treehouse, but it's hard to even explain the treehouse he lived in. That it was, 3 stories?
Well,
stained glass windows?
Eventually it was,
this
yeah.
Big, huge deck? I mean,
It was the coolest when it was just, I put another layer underneath, and it was just barely off the ground at that point, but needed a kitchen, a little more room. I was a hoarder, so I started collecting back then.
And where was this?
Yeah.
But I did wake up with one morning after a hard night's work. I just was so tired. I rode my bike home and slept out on the deck, which I always did. Sure enough, in the morning it was just barely getting light, and I opened my eyes and I go, huh? Because it looked like it was a bear with his nose right against my nose.
Oh my
And it was like a stuffed animal, and
Wow.
and then I jumped up, and luckily he headed down the ladder. He had climbed up the ladder to get there, and I had a piece of firewood handy, and I just whipped it and I smacked him on the butt perfect, from a distance. And Chan Spear had a treehouse across the valley, so 3 minutes later, I hear somebody screaming over there. He just stayed there on occasion. He didn't spend a lot of time there, but he had a treehouse too. So there we go.
Kent, where was the treehouse?
Up at Elk Park Road, and everyone always said someday they're just gonna. I had to lay in front of the bulldozer, the D9 bulldozer going up. I mean, the Forest Service basically screwed up and just said somebody had wanted to make a home site down below, and they made a deal with the Forest Service to reroute the Elk Park Road, which was a pretty rough hill. I mean, it was steep and eroding, but the new one they made ended up being way, way worse. It's kind of toward the bottom of Elk Park Road now. Sure enough, they go right by that treehouse. And luckily by then I had pretty much abandoned the treehouse and had to eventually take it down. But I was working on the shop and living in the shop. And then I went from the treehouse to Elliot Silverberg's underground house on Buffalo Pass for a few years. So one extreme to the other.
Any other questions for Kent? Well, thank you so much.
Thank
That
you
was
for
fun.
your time.